So, kind of doing my first IEP, I was a little nervous just because I'm like, wow, I have to put like everything I learned in school to kind of like apply it in real life. I think the thing that scared me the most is like I'm managing this document for the student that's gonna help them out like for after high school. I think it was more of the fact that I was like, oh, it's a legit document. Oh crap, let me not mess this up. um, I when I started the process, I just sat down with my mentor. Was like, hey, so what does this look like? What type of things should I be doing? I know assessments how to get done, and my residency has a specific way of doing assessments. And mentor was like, all right, these are some of the best practices. Kind of take it as a grain of salt. Either use them or you don't. So it was kind of first setting up a calendar of like, okay, so we need to have X, Y, and Z assessments with the students. So let's make sure we get them done by X, Y, and Z date. Then from there, it's like, okay, let's write section 7 by this date, and then let's start adding like the transitional sections and really getting more into details. So he's like, you have it done with a proper timeline, and it doesn't kind of go into other sections. I think getting the data was a little, I don't want to say hard, but more challenging because some teachers went like super in depth and were super like giving you like opportunities as well as like some strengths. But then you had teachers that were super like negative or very vague with their verbiage, and you're like, let me see what I could do with this. I really took the fact that using like Google Forms is really great to collect data on students, specifically more for like teacher input and student input. So I grabbed that data on my student. Then, luckily for her, I did have her in one of the classes that I oversee. So I was kind of able to give her some assessments, and kind of let my mentor take over the class, and emailed and communicated with the teachers and be like, hey, would it be okay if I put this student out for an assessment on X, Y, and Z? Did the assessments, I want to say maybe within like a 3-day period, was able to get that data. Luckily, we had like SAT testing, and I was able to write section 7, make sure I use Grammarly because we want to make sure that verbiage is well. Before putting it in the system, I kind of wrote it down as a document. Really thought about lengthwise. Wanted to make sure like everything was super explained. After that, I shared that document with my mentor for him to see. Then we would touch base and be like, all right, like he said it was really great, but there was just like a few little minor tweaks that I had to do. So kind of doing that, it gave me a little bit more of a sense of relief because I was like, okay, I was really scared that my IEP was gonna sound bad, but based on his feedback, it was very good. So there wasn't really like nothing that I had to change major, especially because I was able to like what's that word? Verify that information and make it, kind of have my receipts, if that makes sense. Yeah, so the data was very helpful. The one thing I did struggle with, I would say, was how do I come up with these post-secondary transitional goals, but also making sure like we're hitting these quarterly benchmarks, especially with like it being a month before seniors graduate. So my mentor was kind of able to be like, all right, like think of like writing would be for like employment purposes. They had to learn how to like apply for jobs, or college. The other part was like using mathematics for like everyday life skills. With doing money, reading a checkbook, how to like look for a savings account with interest. Then you also had was it reading? No. Yeah, it was reading, which involved on how to like read like your financial aid package, read your job applications. Kind of reading's kind of like pretty much the one thing that's all around us. So I was able to use that and use skills and stuff that they've done in class for the student and use those as my quarterly benchmarks. Um, Same thing, we'll do it in a document, write it out, then have my mentor oversee it, feedback, and then he would be like, all right, let's go on SSM website and start putting in the data. Once we're in SSM, he just kind of was like, all right, you got X, Y, and Z done. These are some things that will help you with like making the IEP process, just because it could take anywhere from 5 hours to maybe more, depending on the student, especially if it's like a ghost student. But luckily, the student was active and present, so it wasn't hard. I want to say maybe a good like it took me maybe like a good week working on it, maybe like an hour each day, just because based on our lesson planning, classes, and all that in between. Yeah, so I think after that, I want to say I felt very like I'm 85% confident in like writing an IEP. I don't want to say 100 because I think as a first year teacher, I would be learning, especially from like other peers. Starting a new job in the fall, as well as like what are expectations from the case manager or just the school in general when it comes to IEPs. So yeah, I want to say like I'm good going into writing an IEP, but I'm also like not scared of it as I was when writing this first IEP. When it came to facilitating the IEP, I was a little nervous because I was like, oh man, this is the first time I'm kind of my own. I sat down through different IEPs and just kind of like observe, watch, and I was able to like, at first the mom wasn't really picking up for the student, but luckily she last minute was like, hey, can we do a phone call? And she was super receptive, so we gave her a call. It was like me, my mentor, the case manager. We had a translator there, and yeah, that was 4 of us, and a gen ed teacher. Sorry. So we kind of started talking to the mom. Touching base with my mentor. He was like, make this more about post-secondary. Students about to graduate. We want to make sure we're kind of setting her up for success in the last few weeks. So it was more asking the mom, like, asking and giving her like, students doing well in X, Y, and Z, but student could use a little bit more help with, for example, self-advocating for themselves. While another one was like, student is very great at taking notes, super receptive to feedback, and kind of tying it on to the post-secondary. So with that, we also like have the mom like give us her perspective of like, where do you see your child going once they leave high school? With the mom, she was like it just sounded like she wasn't very like into it. It was like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. And at that point, she was she was from Venezuela. So I was like, okay, let me kind of talk to her in Spanish. I was like, hey, like, what are your we have a translator, but I was like, let me just kind of talk to her from my perspective, especially just being the teacher that I have with her. I'm the teacher of her, the student. So I was like, hey, in Spanish, I was like, hey, I just want to make sure, like, students about to graduate, just want to make sure we're setting them up for success. Is there any concerns you have? Just because we want to be able to support them. The mom's like, not really. She's like, I just think I want her to make sure that they are able to apply for jobs, and that, which in my head I was like, okay, we kind of cover this, but this is really great information to kind of have in the backhand just to kind of move forward through the school year. I think definitely with this experience, I want to, make sure I use this as a kind of like a ground where I learn and then build up from each lesson, each section that I have with IEPs. And, hopefully maybe by next year, the year after that, I'll be really great at doing IEPs. But I know it's always evolving, always changing, and definitely the way that you want to word everything's going to be different. But other than that, I'm super excited and especially learning how to do these IEPs.